Humans experience many changes throughout the day to which they must respond. These changes are known as stimuli. A stimulus may be internal, such as body temperature, water levels, sugar levels, carbon dioxide and oxygen concentration, or it may be external, like pain, environmental temperature, and danger. Regardless of whether the stimuli is internal and external, we must be able to respond. Hello everyone, this is the Science Check and welcome to my video. Today's video will be the video 1 of my human response to the environment section. This section counts 36% of your overall exam, so it is the largest section of your paper 1. Today we'll be looking at the human nervous system. The topics that will be discussed today are the structure and function of neurons, the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, as well as the simple reflex arc. The human nervous system may be divided into 2 parts. The central nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spine, and the peripheral nervous system, which consists of an autonomic part, which is involuntary movements, and the somatic part, which is voluntary movements. Examples of a voluntary action would be running, jumping, eating, or walking. Examples of involuntary actions or reflex actions include breathing or sneezing. The autonomic part can be divided further into 2 subsections. These are the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. Neurons are the structural unit of the nervous system. Neurons are specialized cells which connect the brain and the spinal cord to all other parts of the body. As this figure shows, a neuron has the following structure: dendrites, which transmit impulses towards the cell body, a cell body with a nucleus, which controls the metabolism of the cell, an axon, which transmits the impulses away from the cell body, and the myelin sheath, which insulates the axon and speeds up transmission of impulses. The myelin sheath is enclosed by a membrane called the neurolemma, which helps to repair damaged neurons. There are 3 types of neurons: sensory neurons, intraneurons, and motor neurons. Sensory neurons transmit impulses from the receptors to the central nervous system. Intraneurons connect the sensory neurons to the motor neurons in the central nervous system. And motor neurons transmit impulses from the central nervous system to the effector, which could be a muscle or a gland in the body. A synapse is the functional connection between an axon of one neuron and the dendrite of another neuron. The connection is established by neurotransmitters, which are chemicals that move across the gap between the axon and the dendrite to transmit the impulse. The significance of a synapse is that they ensure the movement of a pulse into one direction. They prevent continuous stimulation of a neuron, and they ensure the impulse is transmitted from the sensory neuron to the motor neuron. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain is made up of delicate nervous tissue which cannot repair itself. The brain is of vital importance because it controls all functions of the human body. For this reason, it is well protected in 3 ways. It is inside a bony cranium. It is surrounded by 3 membranes called the meninges, and is cushioned by a fluid called the cerebrospinal fluid. As this figure shows, the brain has numerous pieces which has different and insignificantly important functions. The cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain, is divided into 2 hemispheres, the left and the right, which is connected by the corpus callosum. It controls voluntary functions like walking, speaking, and writing, and receives and interprets sensations from sensory organs such as hearing, sight, feeling, and taste. It is also responsible for higher thought processes like memories, intellectual and reasoning. And the corpus callosum allows for communication between the 2 parts. The cerebellum is the second largest part of the brain and is located right below the cerebrum. It coordinates spinal muscle to bring about balance when walking or moving or running. It helps maintain balance and posture and maintain muscle tone. The medulla oblongata is the lowest part of the brain and it continues down the body as the spinal cord. It controls breathing, peristalsis, heartbeat, and swallowing. It transmits impulses from the spinal cord to the brain, and it controls less important reflexes like blinking, coughing, sneezing, vasodilation, vasoconstriction, and salivating. And the hypothalamus, which is the smallest section of the brain just above the pituitary gland. It is the control center for all things such as hunger, thirst, sleep, body temperature, and emotions. The spinal cord is made up of delicate nervous tissue which cannot be repaired. It is therefore protected by 33 vertebrae with discs of cartilage between each to act as a shock absorber, 3 membranes known as the meninges, and cerebrospinal fluid. The spinal cord passes from the medulla oblongata to the lumbar region of the lower back. 31 pairs of spinal nerves are attached to the spinal cord through the openings between the vertebrae. Each spinal nerve has a dorsal cord which enters and a ventral root which leaves the spinal cord. The spinal cord has the following function. It transmits impulses from receptors to the brain and from the brain to the effector. It contains reflex centers that function automatically to protect the body. The peripheral nervous system consists of all nerves found outside the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system consists of 12 pairs of cranial nerves which are connected to the brain and 31 pairs of spinal nerves which are connected to the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system can be divided into 2 pairs: the somatic nervous system, which controls voluntary muscle, and the autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary muscles. The peripheral nervous system has the following function. It transmits impulses from the central nervous system via the sensory neurons, and it transmits impulses from the central nervous system to the effectors via the motory neurons. As we have established, the autonomic nervous system controls involuntary actions. The nerves of this system allow the body to react to changes in the internal environment so homeostasis can be maintained. The autonomic nervous system can be subdivided into the sympathetic nervous system and the perisympathetic nervous system. Each organ in the human body is supplied by 2 types of nerves, the sympathetic nerve and the perisympathetic nerve. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for the flight or fight function in emergencies, whereas the perisympathetic nervous system restores the body to a normal state after emergency. The 2 systems work antagonistically to one another. Taking all these systems together, we get what is called a reflex action and a reflex arc. A reflex action is a quick automatic response to a stimulus. For example, a knee jerk, sneezing, and a quick removal of a body part away from a danger in response to pain. A reflex arc is a pathway along which the impulses are transmitted to bring out a response to a stimuli during a reflex action. The significance of a reflex action is that it allows for a quick response without thinking about it to prevent damage to the body. This diagram can be used to show an example of how a reflex action can take place. The arrows in the diagram shows the reflex arc. The reflex action of a person touching a hard part. Firstly, the stimuli is detected by the receptors and converted into a nerve impulse. The nerve impulse is then transmitted along the sensory neuron through the dorsal root of the spinal cord. The impulse is then transmitted from the sensory neuron to the intraneuron in the spinal cord, then to the motor neuron in the spinal cord. The impulse exits the spinal cord through the dorsal root and is transmitted along the axon of the motor neuron to the effector organ. In this case would be the muscle of the hand connecting. The hand will pull away from the stimuli quickly. As you can see in the diagram, the reflex action does not include the brain. Impulses will reach the brain after the reflex arc is completed. This will result in the pain being felt. Well, this is today's video, guys. I hope this is helpful. As I say, all diagrams, tables, pictures will be in the Google Doc link below, as well as some example questions. The next video will be discussing disorders that are associated with the human nervous system. Hope to see you soon. Bye.